Hallelujah. Yeah. Hi guys. I have the pleasure of presenting you guys a very important person for Iskali, great mentor for Vicente, one of our biggest supporters, someone that believed in the mission of Iskali since we had the retreat center, the center in Maywood. Probably didn't have $5,000 in the bank account. Martín Cabrera, thank you so much for all the work and support you've done for Iskali. I personally appreciate, because without Iskali and without your support, none of us would be here today. Martín Cabrera is the CEO and founder of Cabrera Capital Markets and Cabrera Capital Partners. Martín has over 25 years of investment experience and currently serves as a board member at Chicago Community Trust, member of the Archbishop's Finance Council, and chairman of the Real Estate Committee for the Archdiocese of Chicago, chairman of the Endowment Committee at St. Ignatius College Prep, governing board member at Econ Illinois, board member of World Business Chicago, board member of Latino Donor Collaborative, former chairman of the City Colleges of Chicago, and former chairman of the Chicago Plan Commission. Martín Cabrera is also the recipient of the 2020-2021 Iskali Inspire Award. I now present to you Martín Cabrera.
So thank you very much, and it's actually an honor for me to be here and to see kind of the crowd and also to see how Iskali has grown, and even this beautiful room and the beautiful floor. I came to visit back when there was kind of red carpeting on the walls, and it didn't look quite like this. So it's great to see it, and all of you, you're all very inspiring. So it's really my honor to be here and just to be with all of you. And I'll give you a little background on myself. I was born here in Chicago, but my parents were born in Mexico. My mother is from a little pueblito in Ignacio Allende in Durango. And it's about, probably the biggest town is Victoria. It's about an hour or so outside of Durango and on the way to Torreon. And my father is from San Luis Potosí, so they came here when my mother was 6 and my father was 7. And my brothers and I, my brother, my younger sister, and I have a half-sister as well, we're all here. And for the most part, we grew up in La Villita on 26th Street. And my father wanted to get us out of the neighborhood because of all the gangs and the environment, so we moved to the West Lawn area. And it was good. It was very challenging for me as well because of the neighborhood. I think there were 3 Mexicanos at the school, and my brother, myself, and another kid, Marcos. So it was a little challenging growing up in the neighborhood, and it was very different from La Villita. But from there, I were in public schools kind of my whole life. I was at Eli Whitney starting off, and then we transferred to Marquette Elementary, and then I went to Bogan High School. And then I went on to Northern Illinois University and studied for a bit at London School of Economics, and then came back home and started in the investment business back right out of college. And I was very fortunate to grow and hustle and work hard, just like all the other Latinos in every different industry, and been able to grow. I started the business about 22 years ago. And we are one of the largest Latino investment banks and institutional brokerage firms in the country. Last year, we did about $280 billion in deals. And really fortunate. And also just knowing that the work that we're doing, we ride on the shoulders of our people in our community, and we have to lift up the people behind us. And the corporate ladder that we're climbing up, we have to make sure it's going down as well to bring others up. And I've had the pleasure of advising presidents of this country as well as other countries on them and very direct on some of their shortcomings, especially with our Latino community, which they don't always like, but I feel like it's my obligation as a Latino to tell them and give them advice and direction, whether it's presidents or CEOs or chairmen of the board or different cardinals as well. But I wanted to share more so about just my journey and my Catholic journey as well, which it was kind of up and down and not even existent for a while. So, you know, as like every Mexicano family, you grow up Catholic, and my parents are Catholic, and they decided to try out a different religion when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And so I started going for my first communion classes, but then we stopped and went to a different religion. It was Christian non-denominational. And my father stopped going to that one, but my mother kept going on and off. And we would actually go to a school, and I wasn't very involved. I liked the music, but when it came to like their sermons and the teachings, I really didn't listen too much. And so my mother ended up leaving the church after a while. And I just felt like this calling. I was in high school, and I was not the best kid growing up as well. I fought a lot. I got into a lot of fights. I had this chip on my shoulder that I always, wanted to fight. And started breaking into houses probably when I was about 7 years old. And there was a lot of things in my background that, I'm not proud of, but it's part of life and growing up. And even growing up, we joke around, it's like, yeah, we're broke as the Ten Commandments. And we're always, struggling as a family. And whether it was paying rent or mortgage, it wasn't really okay. We're like 1 month behind. We're usually about 6 months or 9 months behind the mortgage payment and figuring out how to do it. So, but that journey in my faith was something that my grandmothers were very Catholic, and the Virgen Guadalupe played a big role in their lives and in our lives. So my mother ended up going back to the Catholic faith. And during high school, I was still getting into trouble and still fighting too. But I felt like I was missing something. And I felt like I was almost cheated by all my friends who went to Catholic schools. They knew all of these biblical stories, and that I felt like I never learned. And so when I was in high school, I started going back to church, and sometimes I just go on my own. There was a St. Rita Church over by 63rd in Fairfield. And I started going back, and I had never gone to confession. So my first confession was when I was 22 years old. And that's when I made my first communion and my confirmation. And the priest, after a while, he would see me at church, and it was funny because I would see people going up and getting la hostia, and I was like, what are they saying when they go up there? It's like I almost want to try to fake it to see, like, hey, can I go up there? But I'm not sure what they were saying. It's like, and when they catch me and bless me and say, okay, hey, what are you doing? Like, but it was more so that sense of getting closer to God. And I asked the priest, he's like, well, you never made your first communion? It's like, no, and I explained the story. He's like, well, you should kind of come. There's going to be a class. I was like, I'm going to be like a 22-year-old guy with all these little kids. And he's like, no, we have one for adults. And so I went back and I made my first communion and my confirmation. And I remember saying my first confession. I asked the priest, I was like, okay, Father, it's like, we might need a little while set aside for this. So, but I remember making my first, confession, and it was about 3 hours, and I just sat in the pew with him and just let it all out. And I was crying, and I came out of there feeling so good. I'm like, man, all this weight that I had on my shoulders, I just let it go. And it was something that, I felt so much closer to God too. And it didn't matter how bad I was as a kid and all the trouble I had gotten into and the mistakes I made and the wrong paths that I had taken. But it was really God just allowing me to say, hey, it's okay, you're still welcome here. And I was so embarrassed, and I felt almost like I'm kind of like a user, because like, God, I only turn to you like when I really need something. And I had this, maybe it's Catholic guilt, but like I don't want to, like, every time I really need his help, this is when I'm turning to him, and I felt guilty about it. And the priest told me, he's like, you know, Martín, he's like, you can turn to drugs, you can turn to women, you can turn to alcohol, you can turn to all these things, but you don't, you're turning to God, and that's what he wants you to do. He wants you to open up your heart, and even though you might feel like you're using him, he wants you to use him. He wants you to welcome you in. And so it was something that, it was kind of mind-blowing for me that he was willing to like look at me and avoid all of my sins of, all the bad stuff I had done in life. And to really kind of take all of that and to take it in. And even as, I made my first communion, made my confession, I was like, wow, I really want to learn more about God, all these biblical stories and reading the Bible. So I always felt like there was something spiritual in my family, and it really kind of comes from my grandmother's, my abuelita Kina, and she's like gonna be 103 this year. She still lives with me and my mother. And my other grandmother, Juanita, and then her sister. But it was like this very spiritual, like the Virgin had the spirit and was calling me back to the church all these years. And so it would help me, and even when I started working, I remember, as just out of college, within about 6 months, I was the top performer in the brokerage business. And a lot of the others were like 40 and 50 years old. And one guy was about my age, and he's like, hey, Martín, how are you doing it? Like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I go to Mass every morning at St. Peter's at about 7 in the morning and just stop in there and say a prayer and ask him to bless me and make sure that I'm doing his work and doing his will. And somehow he would bless me. And, I think it was, he's like, I'm not Catholic. I was like, you don't have to be. You can still stop in the church. And he would do that, and I would see him there in the mornings, and he's like, it really makes a difference when you start off that way. And, even in my career, it was something like, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'll work my tail off, but I always know the blessings that I have, it's not because of what I do, but it's more so what God has given me, and the challenges and what we do with it. And even though we deal with like billions of dollars and trading every day, like money really doesn't mean that much to me. It's just a tool and what you can do with it to impact lives and serve others. And that's something that means a lot to me, and every day I never fail to thank God for what he's done for me and for my family. And, for some folks, they're so focused on their career and their business card, what's the title on there, what kind of car you have, what kind of house you have, and all those things don't mean anything. It's really kind of, what is it you're doing with the resources you have, and how are you going to go out there and make a difference? And you can have no resources whatsoever, but just have that passion in your heart. It's like, I'm serving God, and I'm going to go and make a difference. And sometimes when starting up Iskali or Vicente is starting it up and having a capital campaign, it's like, hey, we have the good Lord with us. We have to think big and act like we own it, and go out there and make it happen. And that's something that, it doesn't matter how broke we were, where we came from in the neighborhood, that you can do anything in life. And there's something that I have a little sticky on my computer. It's like, all things are possible through Christ our Lord, who strengthens us. And sometimes when all those challenges are out there, and there'll be a lot of challenges. Like, that's where you have to remind yourself that you're serving God, and He is with you at all times. And there's been a lot of times, even in business, where business was great, and then, lost it all. And, even starting off, I think I was about 25 or 26 years old. And like I said, we never had any money. So when I made a little bit of money, and it's probably making somewhere about $600,000 a year, I'm like, all right, this is a great big commission check. I'm taking all my friends to Vegas, and we're gonna have a great time and party it up. And then you learn too. It's like, I have all my family here, and want to put my nieces and nephews through good schools and make sure that they have those Catholic values with them too. So you go through great times and you go through really bad times. And there's been some times where, I was telling Vicente too, it's like, I remember that we went through a really bad stretch in business, and I thought I had to close the business and even file for bankruptcy. And I had all this debt that was mounting on me. It was about $12 million in debt. I'm like, how the heck am I going to get out of this? I dug this really bad hole. And I'm like, Lord, help me. Show me the way. Give me a sign, something. And, you struggle. But I think in those times of struggle, that's when you become closer to God. And sometimes He takes you through those deep agony and struggles and sufferings to bring you closer to Him. And it was some lonely kind of nights that, I couldn't sleep, and this sometimes went on for years. And I would sleep sometimes on the couch because I couldn't sleep, and I'd have the crucifix with me. I'm like, all right, just somehow, maybe I'll get like 2 hours of sleep and try to figure it out tomorrow morning. But it is kind of that God's blessings that get you through some difficult times. And I think, even as young adults, I see all of you, and it's inspiring because you're going to go through struggles in life, whether it's losing family members, losing siblings, maybe losing a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you think like, hey, life is over, like it can't be like any worse. But, somehow the good Lord looks upon you and finds a different path for you, and allows you to move on and do some even greater things and meet even some better people. And that's something that, I think we have an obligation to go out there and make a difference. And Luis Montgomery as well kind of involved with me over at St. Ignatius, and how we're gonna kind of change things for our community as well. And that passion and that fire that we have as Catholics, and none of this is really happening in other parts of the country. So all of you are very unique in the sense that people are seeing what you're doing, and I'm talking about it in Boston, in New York, in LA, in San Antonio, in Houston, Arizona, and other parts of the country of what Iskali is doing. And it's very motivational for Catholics, Latinos and non-Latinos too. But to see all these young adults that are fired up about our faith and taking time, on a conference and a long weekend to go out there and make a huge difference. But it is really that desire to please God and to do better and to go out there and serve others and to be selfless in giving of yourself and of your time. But to have that passion, it's something that will make a huge difference. And the good Lord will always provide the path and the way, and we'll make sure that you're doing the right thing. And that's something that, from all the mistakes that I've made in life, I always thought, it's like, God will never forgive me for all of my sins. And I was like, there's no way he would ever do that. And, when I finally was able to have that moment to kind of make that confession, it was so relieving, but also I was so happy. I think I cried probably for like full 3 hours while I was giving those confessions. And, I probably left half of them off the table because I forgot about them. And remembering them later, I wanted to go back and tell the priest. But our God is all loving and all merciful. And that's what I try to tell others as well. And even for some of our interns, at our office, they would ask us, like, what's been your secret to success? I was like, my faith in God. And it's okay to say that, and I'm proud to say it. And some people are like, oh yeah, that faith isn't going to pay the bills. Like, no, it will. And it's having that dedication and knowing that it's going to take care of your family and, all of the work that you're doing, no matter what line of business you're in, whether you're a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, you can be in investments, you might be a community leader. But that faith is something that's all powerful, and there's nothing that our good Lord can't do. So it is something that all of you are very inspiring for all of the Catholics, all the old school Catholics that are out there. And we're trying to figure out, like, what's happening when we hear all this negativity about our Catholic faith, that, okay, the numbers are dwindling as Catholics. There aren't enough priests. They're closing some of the schools. But you are the light that's inspiring so many. And you don't even know it. But you are kind of, really kind of that faith and hope of what you're doing and what you'll continue to do. And what you're doing here, it's like you're touching other lives. And you're reaching out to some of your other friends to bring them closer because of how it makes you feel and how it's bringing you closer to God. So, I encourage you to continue to do it, and everything that you do in life, just give it up for the greater glory of God, and He'll provide the way, and He'll provide the means. And when things seem so hopeless, like there's no way out, He never leaves you by His side. He's going to be there, and He's going to be supporting you and helping you figure it out. And that's one thing that I've learned, and I've tried to tell friends of mine too that have gone some very difficult points in life. One of my friends, he thought he was going to be going to jail, and he struggled for many years. But I would just talk to him about God, and he became a lot closer to God. I was like, maybe that's why you needed to go through this struggle in life, for that one reason, of bringing you closer to God. He's like, this is a really tough lesson. I was like, maybe He'll trying to tell you and you weren't listening, just like I was. But He brings you closer and wraps His arms around you, and He picks you up and lifts you. Just like in the saying, there's, Jesus on the beach and carrying the one person during the most difficult points in life. So I know as young adults, you have that passion to go out there and make a difference. And those things that seem impossible, nothing's impossible. When we have to go out there and raise funds for Iskali, it's like there's no limits and nothing's impossible. We just have to make it happen. It's like we're going to do it because we have a good Lord that we are riding on His shoulders, and we're going to go out there and make it happen for all of you, and all the people who are going to come behind you as well. So I just want to say thank you for having me and sharing a bit of my Catholic faith and my story and the struggles. And, I'm just really happy and excited for all that you're doing and for all that Iskali is doing, because it really is that plane that's kind of making us kind of push forward and to go and talk to complete strangers about what Iskali is doing, and we could talk about the stories and the impact that you're having on our Catholic mission, not just here in the Chicagoland area, but around the country. So gracias a todos ustedes. Take any questions just on anything, whether it's Catholic faith or background or even on business or challenges.
My name is Joreli. I'm part of the Queen of Nations community. My question is about business. So I recently quit my job to start a business with my friends. But do you have any advice for starting? We've been for a year already. It's like a marketing company.
Yeah. So, look, starting any business is difficult, and I guess like growing up in the neighborhood too, and like I told you, I'd always end up fighting. So, starting a business is like fighting every day, and it's like getting up and running through brick walls. And I think sometimes when I was a younger kid, and maybe I was like 6 years old, and sometimes I'd pick fights with like some 10, 11-year-olds. And, you know, they would like knock me down, punch me, and then get back up, and they'll just say, stay down, stay down. I'm like, no, I get back up. But part of it in business, you have to do that as well. And those struggles that you have and that perseverance, and look, it's the faith and knowing that, you know, hey, it's the struggles when you do like get that contract or win that client, it makes you appreciate it that much more. And it's all of those, that determination and those struggles that make you appreciate it. And I remember when I was starting off my business, and I was trying to grow the business, market it, trade the stocks and bonds, and market to folks, and go out at night and market and have dinners and drinks and meet people. And I would get a contract that was like this big, they would send to me. I'm like, I don't have time to read through that. Let me get to the last page. I'm going to sign it. Let's do the deal. Let's go. And as we were growing, I brought in one of my friends that I went to college with, and he had more of an operations background. And he's like, why did you sign this contract? I was like, I don't have time to sign the contract. I was like, I need your help. I was like, I need you to run operations. Like, I'm like writing checks, and I didn't even have time to like balance the checkbook, and I was bouncing checks. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, the city didn't pay you yet. I'm like, what do you mean they didn't pay us? So it's all of those struggles and all those things that when you do like win that client, it makes it that much more worth it. And it's never gonna be easy. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. And you have to make sure that, you know, you're working as hard as you can and as smart as you can, and tapping into resources and other people that have done it before too. And have made, like, some people are like, oh, coming out of college, I'm gonna start my own business. I was like, well, why don't you make mistakes with other people's money first in a big corporation, and then start up your own business, because you learn a lot too. And I've made plenty of mistakes, but you know, it's worth it once you do get there. And I still make mistakes, and you try to learn from them and try not to make them, you know, more than once. So my mistakes were expensive mistakes too.
And then one more.
Hello, sir. My name is David. I'm also from Queen of All Nations. You are the best. One of the best community. My question to you is, can you walk us a little bit through your daily or weekly prayer life? And also, do you have any saints that you pray with?
Yeah, so I think every morning I usually start off reading some scripture and do some prayers and who I'm praying for and what I'm praying for. And it's a lot of my family or people who are sick or struggling, and also just praying for God's wisdom and compassionate heart, and that He gives me guidance to be a good leader for my family, but also for my company and others. And sometimes I get so busy and I have morning calls at like 5:30 in the morning with Europe, and like I don't read scripture, and I'm like, man, something's missing from my daily kind of routine. I gotta go back, and you get so busy. But like when I don't like do it, if I miss a day, it's I feel like I'm missing something in the day, and like, oh shoot, something bad's gonna happen to me. It's like the Catholic guilt that comes back. But it is kind of you know, and just really, you know, going to church and trying to find a good priest that's gonna give some good sermons, that's gonna speak to you. And you know, sometimes that's difficult to find too. But you can kind of bounce around to find the right priest that you really feel connected with. And as far as the saints, I know Saint Ignatius is someone that, you know, I say kind of daily prayers too, but the Virgin as well, and I've got some Latino art, and I have a big Virgin Guadalupe in my wall, and I know Vicente's also given me a big Virgin Guadalupe too, so people are like, oh wow, Martin, I feel like it's like in this holy place. I'm like, no, it's a constant reminder for me serving my clients and who I'm working for. So, and some people, you know, even some people in my office are like, Martin, we have some other folks from a different religion that are coming here that are not Catholic, so maybe we should take that down. I'm like, we're not taking anything down. It's like, you can go work for another company if you want to do that. But I think it's really just having faith in who you are and being unapologetic about it, and just kind of going out there, whatever scene it may be. And there's multiple scenes that I pray to, and just silent retreats that I do as well, that it really kind of fills me. There's something on the spiritual side, like we could do a bunch of deals, and that's great, like you get adrenaline from it, but there's always that faith piece that's, you can't fill that cup with business. It's only through God's work, and that's kind of more filling than the business side.
Okay, two more after her. Right? Otherwise, Martín is going to be here for 72 hours.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm from the St. Bede community. And David's question kind of touched on it a little bit, but could you tell us a little more about what your mornings look like?
So mornings, so it's interesting because sometimes when my daughters are, like, when they were younger and they would go to St. Ignatius, I was like, hey, girls, I'll give you a ride in there, and, or some of their friends. And they're like, oh, I know Papi's gonna like say his prayers in the morning, and everybody then say their prayers, and all our friends too. But that's something that they know that, and their friends know that too. But it's an important part of it. And even for my younger boys, they're 10 and twins are 9. They know that if they're coming with me, like, hey, we're saying our prayers, and that's how we get started in the morning. And I want them to continue to do that, so it's more of a tradition where they want to do it, where they feel like if they don't do it, it's something that they're missing. And it's not just saying the prayers before we eat. It's like, I was like, Nico, say a prayer before your soccer game, say a prayer before your basketball game, or before a test. It's like, God's with you at all times. And, you know, you don't have to wait just for, you know, a meal or when you're at church. It's like, I joke around, you could be sitting on the throne and saying a prayer to the good Lord, and like, he's gonna listen to you all the time. And it's something that my kids know, that to have that spiritual relationship with God at all times. And Vicente and I have talked about it. It's not up here, it's right here. And that's where he is at, and that's where he's always gonna be.
Hi, Martín. Thank you again for being here, for all your support towards Iskali. My question is a little bit more focused on career and being a Latino in finance, and I just want to know if you struggled with imposter syndrome at all, and how it was like being the only person that looked like you at tables many times, and how you kind of overcame that and used your faith to help you overcome that.
Yeah, so I think in the finance field, Latinos are still very small, and Latinos are even fewer. And that's why, you know, it's up to us, and I encourage all of our other businesses, major corporations as well as Latino investment firms, to hire. You have to give those opportunities, but I think it's always a struggle. And, you know, I remember I was probably about 3 or 4 months into, just after college, and my job was to make 450 phone calls a day to complete strangers and ask them for $300,000 to send me so I can invest it. And I remember everyone was on the phone was ringing, and I was like, okay, nobody's picking it up, but the market's open, so somebody might want to do a trade. So I picked up the phone, I was like, holy stockbrokers. And some guy yelled out, like, you're supposed to be making outgoing phone calls, you spick. And I was like, I jumped up out of my seat, and like the neighborhood came out of me. And And I'm like, I'm gonna kick his butt on there. And like, I got up and I was gonna like go after him. And I was like, look, I can't let the neighborhood come out of me. And I was like, I've got to show them, but I've got to show them through business. And that's what I was like, I'm going to get in 7 o'clock in the morning, work 11 o'clock at night. And it's like, I'll work everywhere. And that's what maybe like the top producer at an early age. But I think it was my faith as well that actually allowed me to take that gentleman, and he came and asked me for help. And he needed some support and needed help with his trades. And we became very good friends. And I was like, part of that's forgiveness in our faith and educating him. So I would take him on a Wednesday night, that was on 31st Street back in the day, and there'd be a bunch of parties. And this guy was like 6'4", stood out like a sore thumb. And he's like, Martín, he's like, I didn't know any Latinos growing up. I was never exposed to any Mexicanos. And it was an education process. And I'd take him by my grandmother's house. She'd serve him a big plate of food on there. But he loved coming and hanging out. It's like, you hang out with all your cousins? Like, I don't even know my cousins. But he ended up becoming a very good friend. And it was an education process of just teaching him as well. And I think that's what we have to do in business, is share how beautiful our culture is. And, just knowing who we are, it's like being strong about it, but knowing that this is our faith, and, we're great at what we do, whether we're picking lettuce or tomatoes or stocks or bonds. It's like, we're gonna be great, and our work ethic is unmatched. So, be proud of who you are. You're probably gonna be the only one at the table, sometimes only Latina. And it's going to come with challenges. I tell my daughters, I was like, you're going to have to work twice as hard, but you're going to be 3 times better than everyone else too.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here. I have a question regarding failure. I think we're naturally failure avoidant, whether it's your career or personal life. And you mentioned there was a few times within your career where in your business you were close to failing. So what's the biggest thing you've taken from failure, the biggest lesson that failure has taught you throughout your career?
I think even those 450 phone calls I'd have to make a day, I'd sometimes have 6 or 7 people that I would talk to. So I'd get a lot of rejection and failure. So that really didn't bother me in the rejection side. The failure side did. And even knowing that, even for my business, and putting all of that trust and faith in God, and I'd have that worry about, okay, what are people going to think about me? If I have to close up my business. And I had to just put all of that trust in Him and put it in His hands. And say, God, I don't know, what's going to happen, what my future looks like, and if I have to close up this business, I'll do Your will. And that is something. Once I kind of put all of that in His hands and say, this burden is too heavy for me, I can't shoulder it anymore. You can have me selling paletas. I was like, I'll make it work somehow, some way. And my identity isn't driven by my company or the stature that I might have had. It's really about who He wants me to be. And it's you take me in the direction You want me to go, and I'll follow You, and I'll do Your will. And just knowing that failure is good, and sometimes failure for other folks. And even we try to caution our kids from failure, protect them as much as possible, but sometimes it's good that they fail and fall on their face and make mistakes, because you learn from them. And I failed a lot. But you get back up, and just in those fights, you gotta, dust yourself off, and it's hey, I'm gonna keep fighting, I'm gonna keep pushing forward. And it's not who you are just because you failed. And in the Jewish community, they're okay, you failed at one business? Okay, well, what's the next one you're going to start on? Sometimes in our Latino community, we're oh no, what are people going to think about me, I can't do it again. You know, and I've had some businesses that I've invested in, and other Latinos are like, Martin, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna make it, I'm gonna struggle. It's like, look, I invested in you, I took a chance. I'm a big boy. And what's your next business? Think about what you're gonna do. You know, and we back people, and we have faith in people. So I think failure is just part of life.
Thank you.
Hi Martin, thank you for being here. My name is Marcos. My question is, because you mentioned advocating for people like us to be able to have a seat at the table, what would you tell us, a room full of people who you're advocating for, what is it that we can be doing to make sure that we're taking advantage of the opportunities that people like you are fighting for?
I think part of it, just speaking your mind. As young Latinos and Latinas, you have a lot to offer. And the background and the struggles that you have are valuable because you have a different perspective on life. And when you are at the table, you know, it could be at a corporate board or even, you know, at, you know, you're meeting with the president or somebody really big and powerful, to speak your mind and just be firm about it. And it's lonely sometimes and it's scary because like I've had to bring up issues and it's like throwing a bomb in the middle of the table. They're like I can't believe he said that. And I was like, look, it's out there. It's a big elephant in the room and nobody's really talking about it. It's like, what are you going to be doing for Latinos in the U.S.? And just know that you're doing the right thing and you're trying to like serve others by doing it. I've had so many people, unfortunately, when they are at tables like that, and you know, they're meeting with the president and they want to talk about really small stuff and oh, how are the Bulls doing in the Cubs? It's like, all right, we got an hour with the president of the United States. I was like, let's jump into it right away. It's like, we don't want to waste any time. It's like, our community's getting screwed here, here, and here. This is what you need to do. If we're not seeing it, it's a slap in our community's face. And we've been there. We represent 18% of the population in this country and 22% of the buying power. And sometimes it's just going at it like that so that they think of us sometimes we're so nice and humble and very respectful. It's like, screw that. It's like, go out there and you gotta take it sometimes and like show your presence and who you are and what you're gonna do. So when you have that opportunity, don't shy away because you're representing our Latino community. And even with your faith, sometimes saying a prayer before you go in that meeting, it's kind of scary. I'm like, oh shoot, I think I just jeopardized my whole company. I just started a year ago, and but you're risking it, but you're risking it for the right reasons.
Un aplauso para Martín. Gracias, Martín. So, Martin and I had a little walk hace unos minutos as we shared with the sad news that last night Bishop Mans passed away. Anoche el señor obispo John Mans murió. Y saben ustedes mejor que yo lo que el obispo hizo por nosotros. El día de ayer estábamos enterrando a uno de nuestros board members. Aparentemente necesitamos mucha intercesión, pues ahora tenemos otro ángel en el cielo y ahora ya es público, sabemos desde la mañana, pero he estado ahí calladito durante el día, pues para que ustedes siguieran su día normal, pero lo platicamos, que ya está oficialmente en los medios de comunicación en Facebook de la Arquidiócesis y se los queremos decir. Solamente queríamos tomar un minuto para recordar a un gran hombre, un hombre que desde que se ordenó obispo tomó dos semanas de vacaciones cada año para visitar a los campos migrantes sin decirle nada a nadie. Ya le dije, señor obispo, ¿por qué no le dice nadie que hace esto? Dijo, porque lo único que quiero, the only thing I want is to live with migrants, be with them, offer mass with them, celebrate with them. In a few of these trips, a photographer followed him around. So we have beautiful pictures of him walking as a bishop con los migrantes. Pero también es una gran pérdida para la Arquidiócesis de Chicago. El señor obispo aprendió español con las cocineras en el seminario y desde ahí tomó la decisión que iba a servir a la comunidad mexicana, hispana. Vivió en Little Village hasta el final. He refused to move out of Little Village porque él quería estar siempre con su gente. Hoy hemos perdido a un gran hombre de la iglesia. La última vez que le dije, señor obispo, Romero para El Salvador y usted para los latinos en Chicago. He from the beginning, for no reason, trusted and defended Iskali. Estuvimos presentes en nuestras primeras 3 consagraciones. The last email I have from him says, I was reading right now, Iskali is the best ministry in the Archdiocese of Chicago, hands down. And then he put a note. Because that's Bishop Mance. Y decíamos yo y Martín hace ratito al platicar de esto que probablemente se está carcajeando de nosotros. Lo puedo imaginar riéndose de nosotros y solamente me gustaría que hagamos una oración por él, pongamos de pie y honremos la memoria de este gran hombre. Simplemente en un minuto de silencio. De una manera muy particular me gustaría que honremos su memoria orando como comenzamos cada uno de nuestros retiros, pero en vez de decir en nombre del Padre, en nombre del Hijo, en nombre del Santo Espíritu estamos aquí, vamos a decir, oramos por Él. En el nombre del Padre, en el nombre del Hijo, en el nombre del Santo Espíritu, oramos por Él. En el nombre del Padre, en el nombre del Hijo, en el nombre del Santo desde el cielo, intercede por nosotros, que te seguimos necesitando. Now we're just going to have a moment to honor his memory. A lot of you were confirmed by him, probably 90% of you were confirmed by him. So we're going to give about 15 to 20 minutes and then we're going to come to Timothy's talk. Gracias.